Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Last week, news broke that the Seth Rich family is suing you for speaking publicly about conversations that you say that you had with them. Can you please tell us how you got involved with the Seth Rich family in the first place?
Sure. And the lawsuit against me isn't necessarily about me speaking. And I'll kind of go into that a little bit because it's hard to understand, Cassandra, because it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So people can interpret this lawsuit any way they want. It's that in itself will become one of the great mysteries, okay, is what is this lawsuit? Look, nobody can empathize more for a family who's lost a family than I can. I feel for these people, and I don't just say that. I actually jumped in because I felt so much for these people. I actually took my own money and tried to help out this family, and we'll get to that in a moment. But what had occurred is a friend of mine had come back from London and had some information that this one individual, and this is the one area where I'm not sharing names, okay, wanted that information to be shared with the Rich family because that person thought it might help them find out who had murdered their son. This person, knows a lot, in fact, knows quite a bit, and I knew this information was relevant. I didn't seek it out, it came to me. Now, why did it come to me? Things just happen in my life, okay? So I was asked to share this information, and I didn't at first. I thought, well, I'm not going to get involved with this. I don't know these people at all. They live in Omaha. The only thing I knew about them was that they lived in Omaha, their son had been murdered, and they were Jewish, okay? I'm Jewish. There's certain rules that Jews, have, and I guess we can just say they were Jewish, I'm Jewish, so I can go find them, and I'll explain to you how I found them in a moment. So without, jumping on it, I started reflecting on my son, who had just gone to college, and thought how terrible it was that somebody's child had been murdered. And then I heard about the story again, and I thought, you know what, why not? So I went on Facebook. I literally said, do any of my Facebook friends know anybody Jewish in Omaha? All right? Because as Jews, we kind of find it interesting when we find Jews in different places. Okay? And I don't know what it is about it. It's like, oh, there's a Jew in Boise? Or I didn't know there were Jews in, Saskatchewan or whatever. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's been that way. So this one guy responded to me and said, my name's Jeremy, I'm Jewish, and I live in Omaha. So I then got him on the phone, didn't say what I was looking for, and I said to him, do you know the Rich family? And he says, yes, actually, I know them. They go to my shul. And I said, is there any chance you could set up a phone call? Because I have something I wanted to communicate to them. This is my involvement. There was no other involvement whatsoever in terms of my interest. I'm just communicating some information that was shared with me from somebody, okay? I don't know if it's relevant or not. So I got them on the phone, and I shared with them the information that this man had wanted them to know. And what I told them was that I was told that your sons downloaded the emails from the DNC server and sold them to WikiLeaks. And Mr. Rich said, and I didn't see him, it was over the phone, he was like, Ed, we already know that. That's not new information to us. I said, oh, I had no idea. I thought this might have been helpful. That's why I felt a need to share it with you. He says, Ed, we know what our sons did. What we want to do is focus on who murdered our sons. Those were the exact words. We don't want to talk about WikiLeaks. We don't want to talk about the DNC and emails. None of that. We want to focus on who murdered our son. That's what matters to us. What's happened in the past is in the past. Then we spoke for the rest of the time about being in Omaha. I go to Omaha from time to time. They come to Dallas. We played a little what we call Jewish geography, who knows who. And towards the end of the phone call, Mrs. Rich said, if you ever learn anything, please let us know. And I always remember, I'm thinking, how am I going to learn anything in Dallas, Texas? Okay? How's that going to occur? It's just not going to. I said, Mr. and Mrs. Rich, if you ever come down here, be happy to show you around. I'm sorry what happened to you. And obviously the information that I had, you already knew, you already had. Goodbye. So a couple of days later, I was talking to a friend of mine who retired from some intelligence agency. And I was talking to him about him getting this product that a friend of his developed and seeing if there was a way to try to get into the government, to try to sell it. And I mentioned to him, I said, if you ever learn anything about this Seth Rich murder, let me know. Now, this guy lived in Washington. And Cassandra, he said, you know what? Fate would have it. I know somebody who knows a lot about it. And I went, oh. He said, have you ever heard of a guy named Cy Hirsch? I said, no. I said, I think I've heard something about him somewhere along the way, but I don't know him. He said, well, he writes, and he actually has written a lot about this and knows a lot about it, but can't get it published by anybody.
Which is shocking because he's an award-winning journalist. Like, we really need to make clear that he is a very well-respected, very, very highly regarded journalist.
Well, I've
with
learned
good
that
sources.
since. I've learned that since. So I said, oh, well, if he knows anything, I would absolutely, find it interesting so I could tell Mr. and Mrs. Rich, and maybe that would help him. And I'm like, wow, what are the chances? And a lot of this is, what are the chances, okay? If I write a story about this, is what are the chances? Well, this stuff happens in my life. All right. 2 days later, I get a phone call. Ed Butowski, this is how he talks. I go, yeah, it's Seymour Hirsch. I'm like, oh. And he just starts talking. And this guy talks as fast as anybody I've ever heard in my life. And my kids had just taught me how to do voice memos on my iPad. And I thought, I cannot keep writing, and I have terrible handwriting anyway. And so I thought, all right, and 6 minutes in, I just thought, I hit voice memo. And he's talking, all right? And I'm kind of listening, and he's saying a lot of outrageous things. He's using a lot of bad language and about a lot of people like Clapper and Brennan, and he's saying a lot of things. But when it was done, I said, thank you, goodbye, and that was the end of the conversation. I took that memo and I sent it over to the Rich family. I said, please confirm when you get this. Maybe this will be helpful. That was it.
Right.
Okay? They respond, got it. Okay.
And on that audio, which I have written about before, he says that the FBI did in fact have his emails, or did have his laptop that had the emails on it and all this stuff, right? Like he lays it all out.
Hey, anybody can go, and I know this is on your website,
right.
But you can go to a website called debunkingrodwheelersclaims.com, and somebody has taken a lot of information and put it up there, and you can hear the audio recording that I taped. Now, I did cut out a lot of things in that recording where he goes on tangents and says some terrible things about people, but everything else there is exactly his words. But let me focus in on this one point. After the Riches got this, okay, they said, got it. I didn't hear from them for about 3 or 4 weeks.
Was this before or after the DNC hired a spokesperson for them? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea. But as I'm developing this relationship, because I'm thinking, wow, here, I got something that might help these people. Okay? Because it said in there that all this information was at the FBI, and the Riches had told me that the Washington police weren't helping them at all. The Metro Police had shut down the investigation. I felt terrible. These people, their son was murdered. All right? No one's helping them find out who murdered their son. I mean, how tragic can this be? So I'm helping these people. This is all I'm doing. And Cy Hirsch happened to have come into my life, and I taped it, never thinking for a moment what would transpire and what this thing would build into. But let's continue. After about 2.5 weeks, I never heard from the Riches. And I don't really care. But it kind of, in my mind, I thought it was kind of rude, quite frankly. All right? Because I sent them something. Here's a guy in Dallas who doesn't know them at all. I sent him something. I didn't hear another word from them. I just kind of thought about it. So I got a hold of Mr. Rich and I said, was that helpful? Sort of like, hey, guess what? I did you something really nice. How about a thank you very much, Ed? Or Ed, help me with this, or anything. Nothing from Mr. Rich. And I thought that was rude. So that's why I called him. He said, yeah, Ed, we've been busy, blah, blah, blah. He acted kind of strange at that point. I said, okay. I said, I just got to ask you a question. Why don't you hire a private detective? And he said, well, we would love to. We would absolutely love to hire a private detective, but we can't afford one. And this is when you hope somebody would have said no. But this is when they said yes. I said, I'll pay for it. And you know what? They said, thank you. And I thought, well, wait, these people just said thank you. how much is a private detective? I mean, this thing just kept building and building. I went, like, how much is a private detective? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know how to find a private detective. So I reached out to people, found out that a private detective in Washington, D.C. is $150 to $250 an hour. I'm not going to pay that much. So I kept looking. I was hoping to find like some private detective, like, was just kind of retired, wanted to do something for free. And then someone recommended a guy who appeared on Fox, seemed like a nice guy, named Rod Wheeler. And through a series of communications I got with Rod, introduced Rod to the Rich family. Mr. and Mrs. Rich and Aaron, the brother, of Seth Rich, interviewed him. Over a 14-day period, they came to an agreement. And the agreement was that Rod was hired, and he had certain contingencies, Rod did. I never saw the contract. Rod had sent him a contract to begin with, and Mr. and Mrs. Rich created a new contract along with Aaron. Didn't know what it said, I did get sent it later on, but I wasn't a party to it. All it said in there was a third party named Ed Butowski will pay the bill. And you know what? I will pay the bill. All right, I said I would do it, and I would do it. And I started off by giving Rod Wheeler $5,000. He was, in some financial, condition where he needed some money. Rod, and I do want to take a moment, did a very good job of doing investigation. I mean, I don't know what a bad job looks like. I don't know a good job.
Notes, and they're fantastic.
I mean, I think the guy did a really good job.
Yeah.
But then towards the end, which I'm sure we'll get to, Rod just had a little problem with telling the truth about a few things. But I think Rod did a fine job, and he's a really nice guy. Even to this day, he's a guy I'd grab a beer with and have go to a game with. He's a really nice guy.
After all this.
You know what? Yeah, I do. He really is he's a nice guy. He's done some schmucky things, but he's a nice guy.
Right.
But the point of this whole thing is that every effort, every move made was to help the Rich family find out who murdered their son.
Right.
After I agreed, Cassandra, to pay the bill, the only times that I would really get involved, for the most part, is I would call Rod up and talk with Rod for two reasons. He was trying to find a job and kept asking me to get him a job at the White House. He said, can you give me a job at the State Department? Or not the State Department, excuse me, the Department of Treasury. Justice Department, excuse me, the Justice Department. Although Rod would have taken a job just about anywhere, And you know what? I'm trying to help him out. I actually tried helping him build a business by talking to him about how he can do investigations for venture capital firms, And when they make investments in companies, they need really good investigators. So I made introductions and gave him a list of 35,000 venture capital firms. I'm helping the guy.
Right.
Okay?
So did you keep in touch with the Rich family during this?
Yes. So Mr. and Mrs. Rich, very nice people. And they're trying to find out, who murdered their son. At the same time, they had a couple of characters in their life. Now, Brad Bauman and the family have become close, Right. Brad Bauman is not one of my favorite people.
Can you explain who Brad Bauman is, just for anybody watching?
Sure. Brad Bauman works for a company called the Posterimus Group. Some name like that.
I don't have it written in front of me.
Yeah, I just don't remember the name of it, but it's in Washington, and he is a crisis management public relation person for the DNC. And I remember Mr. Rich saying to me, who is this guy? He showed up one day and said he was assigned to me by the DNC. Now, why would the DNC assign somebody? I have no idea. And there was another guy named Berkman who was putting up some money, and Mr. Rich asked me to ask him to go away. All right. Now, I think he has a podcast or some show.
Berkman just got assaulted a couple days ago for the second time while he was trying to get source files. So he's actually a lobbyist who had put up a reward for information regarding the case.
And I don't know anything about that. But he asked me, I guess I should check out Brad Bauman.
Berkman, yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe Bauman and Berkman know each other. I have no idea who these characters are, Right. All I know is that Mr. Rich and I developed a relationship. I donated some money to some charity that he wanted me to put money towards because Seth really liked camps, summer camps, and they were naming something for his son. And I would call from time to time because I did ask Rod, how much are you charging an hour? He would never tell me. And look, if someone's charging per hour, you kind of want to know when they're working, all right? It's like lawyers. I can't stand legal bills. And they'll say, oh, yeah, I had to do research. I'm like, well, you're a lawyer. You should already know this stuff. Right. This is the way I think. But I always want to know if I'm being charged. If I'm being charged on an hourly basis, Cassandra, I absolutely want to know what I'm being charged. So I would call Rod from time to time on that. Now, there were some other little things I got involved with because Rod had met Malia Zimmerman. He was introduced to Malia Zimmerman, not by me, but by Adam Housley at Fox News. There's a story out there that somehow I coordinated Rod Wheeler with Malia, and that's not true. Adam Housley, who's a veteran at Fox News and a friend of mine, and Rod Wheeler have known each other for many, many years, and Adam put Rod with Malia because Malia had been looking into the Seth Rich story to write on it.
Okay, so before we jump into the Fox News story, a lawyer from Chicago who's now representing the Seth Rich family actually sent a letter demanding a retraction from the Gateway Pundit when we reported on your conversation that you said you had with Mr. Rich. He said that it was false, reckless, and defamatory to say that Seth or Aaron were ever involved with WikiLeaks. Why do you think that he's denying it so strongly?
Well, one of the things, why do I believe that the Rich family is denying that their sons were involved with the emails and WikiLeaks and so on?
Yes.
Because...
Did they ever say? Or?
Well, yes, we talked about it. They don't want their son's name to be associated with being the people responsible or the person responsible for getting Donald Trump elected. In addition, I was not told this. I was told what I just said to you by Mr. Rich. But what I was not told, which I surmise, is that maybe they're a little afraid that if Seth was murdered, and if Seth's murder was related to him downloading the emails from the DNC server on a $56 Western Digital hard drive, okay?
It was?
Yes. If that happened, and he put it in Dropbox, by the way, that maybe Aaron's life is at risk because of the relationship between what they did together. I don't even know what they did together. I'm not a computer person.
So the WikiLeaks emails came out 12 days after his murder. Do you know what happened with this $56?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
No. And again, remember, I've never had like an interest. I'm a money manager, okay, who just kind of found his way into this by being, quite frankly, a nice guy. These lawsuits, which we'll get to, try to paint a really strange story. And if anybody ever took the time to listen to what these lawsuits said and believe this stuff, they got to go on some kind of medication.
Right.
I mean, these lawsuits are ridiculous.
So in Malia Zimmerman's report, which is now the center of another lawsuit, she said that she cited a second source that was a federal investigator and didn't claim that her entire reporting was based on Wheeler. Do you know anything about the second source, and do you think that it is fair for Fox News to pull her reporting when she had multiple sources confirming the same facts?
So let me tell you, let me answer that question this way. Rod Wheeler read the story and saw this quote: I saw the emails between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks, or something along those lines, said a federal investigator. Rod Wheeler, he told me this on the phone. He said, Ed, I blew it. I thought that was referencing me. He thought that quote was attributed to him. And he had gone on CNN and said, Fox misquoted me. Fox didn't misquote him. He just read it wrong. He thought he was the federal investigator she was referencing. He screwed up. We all screw up. Rod Wheeler screwed up. The quotes that are in these lawsuits that he says he never said, he actually typed them himself.
Right.
He wrote them and said them on television, and anybody who wants to look at these suits and really look into the kind of nonsense that we're being fed through these lawsuits, read it. I mean, here I am being sued, I'm talking to you. Any lawyer's going, oh my God, I can't believe he's talking on camera about this, right? The truth is really simple. I'm not afraid about the truth. The truth is what I'm telling you. The guy typed the quotes.
Do you know anything about the second source that you can say or no?
Yeah, I have to talk to Malia Zimmerman about her sources.
Okay.
But I want to make sure I got this point across. Rod Wheeler said the quotes that he said he didn't say before the article went out. He said it the night before. He said it days later. He wrote the actual quotes that he said were not his quotes.
Right.
And then he brings a lawsuit saying he was defamed.
And I actually have a lot of these text message exchanges and email exchanges, and I will include them in the report that goes along with this.
Please do. I mean, this is how insane this thing is.
Really legitimately word for word.
Right.
And now Malia Zimmerman has had her report yanked and has been smeared all over the media, saying that she made up this story, and every liberal media outlet has used used Fox's retraction as a way to attack any media that reports on Seth Rich.
Yeah.
But Fox News probably shouldn't have even pulled that report, because everything that she quoted Wheeler saying is recorded.
No, you know what it is? I got to tell you, Cassandra, your industry is really tough. Reporting is hard. But there should be, I'm going to use brotherhood, sisterhood. There should be some sort of a collaboration between all people in the media and really look at what happened to Malia Zimmerman. Because Malia Zimmerman is one of the hardest working, most honest reporters. As a matter of fact, she wouldn't go with the story. She had the story for a month and a half and held on to it till she got her second. And she wouldn't go with any of Rod Wheeler's quotes until he confirmed them over and over and over again.
Right,
okay?
which I personally read those text message exchanges, and she sent him a draft. She sent him a full draft of what ultimately was published and said, is this correct? Is there anything that is wrong?
That's right.
And he said no, and by the way, can you please add that I,
believe that the emails lie on a server somewhere in blah, blah, in the FBI.
Yeah.
So Rod Wheeler, all of those things, anybody who takes the time to look at it can see.
I have it right here. He said, Malia, you can add that I do strongly believe that the answers to who murdered Seth sits on his computer on a shelf at the DC police or FBI headquarters, ! And she said, okay, I'll add it.
And you can go to debunkingrodwheelersclaims.com, or actually, you know what you should do? Take those from Debunking Rod Wheeler's Claims, if you can get a hold of them, and put them up on your site. Yeah. People need to understand that Malia Zimmerman did great work.
Right.
She's a great person. She didn't do anything wrong.
Well, she's going through pretty much what Julian Assange is going through. There is a very tight-knit group in the media and amongst journalists, but once you're excluded from it, if you're not telling the right narrative, then you're on the outs, and they're not defending your free press. I don't know if Malia would like to be associated. I'm ranting right now.
Let's just put that aside, Malia and Julian Assange.
I'm just trying to say that there is camaraderie in the media, but if you're not telling the story that they want, then your freedom of press and your freedom of speech doesn't matter anymore.
And Malia Zimmerman, her story, I do not know why that story was taken down. And when it was taken down, after they figured out what Rod Wheeler had messed up, that story should be reposted. You should start put the story back up.
I wrote an article demanding that they put the story back up.
The story should be put back up, because nobody knows. I don't know anything wrong with that story. But so once that story came out, everybody just went, oh, the story's discredited. Malia Zimmerman, this, that. Malia then, here she is put on hold or not able to work or not able to write stories. What did she do wrong?
Right.
All right. And so please carry on.
So now, after the story was retracted and everybody was forced to apologize, even though it wasn't really clear what was actually wrong and it was this big mess, Wheeler actually joined a class action lawsuit against Fox and against you. Can you explain a little bit about why?
Yeah, so this is gets into that if we could have music, like do 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 do. Like this is when things just get more bizarre. So Rod Wheeler had called me because he wanted to sue a lady named Maria Morocco, which we haven't talked about. But Maria Morocco had taken Malia's story and had promised Rod, apparently, this is what Rod had said, that she wouldn't use the story and wouldn't do anything with the story except tease it, okay?
She was the local Fox.
Local Fox 5 reporter. And he asked me to get him an attorney. So I made a recommendation for an attorney, all right? And not that I supported his case, but someone said, hey, you know an attorney? And I said, here are a couple of names. And then about 2 weeks later, I call him up and I say, hey, did you get a hold of one of those people? And he said, Ed, I found me another lawyer who's going to give me $4 million. I said, Rod, why would anyone give you $4 million? I mean, what in the world did you do to deserve $4 million? From who? He says, you'll see. He said, you're not going to like it, but you'll see. And I thought, okay, never talk to Rod Wheeler again. Then, in the middle of June, I get an email from a lawyer named Wigdor. I'm like, at first I was like, well, I can't, who is this? Like, it said, we are asking you to retain copies of all of your emails between you and Sean Spicer, Steve Bannon, and the President of the United States. And I wrote back, I said, okay, please ask Rod Wheeler, because it said it was a preparation of a lawsuit, Rod Wheeler against me. And I said, you tell Rod Wheeler to keep all his between him and Vladimir Putin, Kung Jong-il, I think that's how you say his name, and Barack Obama. I said, I just thought this was a complete joke. And then I found out what was happening. So this is what happened. And this is about the lawsuit August 1st. And it's really important to understand this, Cassandra. Fox News was trying to buy Sky News. Sky News, when you're in Europe, it's you see it everywhere, and it's a news agency. I don't know if it's a conservative news agency, but it's a news agency, and you see it a lot of times all over Europe. Right. It has lots of upside potential, okay? And Fox had already bought, from what I understand, 30% of the company and wanted to buy the other 70%. But Parliament was staying in the way of this occurring. Said, you're not going to be able to buy this till Fox cleans up its act. Wigdor had been going over to Europe and telling people in Europe, anybody should go Google this, okay? You want to question what's coming out of my mouth? Go Google this. Wigdor was going overseas and encouraging people at Parliament to not sell the other remaining portion to Fox because of their indiscretions and what a bad group of people Fox. Let me tell you, Fox News, and I want to make this very clear, hardworking, good people. Their stories are, they can't go with a story unless it's really, really checked out. And they've got a great news agency, a great news department, and really great people there. And about 70% of the people, Cassandra, that work there are Democrats. People don't believe that. It's unreal. People just don't understand the truth behind some of these companies. Fox News is a great place. But this guy Wigdor has these lawsuits of Fox employees saying there's race discrimination, there's sex discrimination. And if Fox didn't buy the other 70%, they'd have to pay Sky News $270 million.
Right.
Now, this is where it gets real interesting, and it's really important to understand. Wigdor went to the DLA Piper attorney representing Fox and said, give me $60 million, and I will drop all the cases. We won't try any of them, which I think is terrible for the people who have cases, all right? I don't know if the cases are real, not real, but for them to put their name on a piece of paper and say, I'm suing my employer, they've got to feel like there's something there, and they deserve their day in court. But Wigdor, he wasn't going to do that. He said, we're not going to try any of these cases. You give me $60 million. Where do you think $4 million might have gone? He would take about $24 million if history told us anything, and the rest would be split between those people. And then Fox could go buy the rest of Sky News.
Right.
Well, the DLA Piper attorney looked at him and said, his exact words from what I heard from someone who was there was, "You're a terrorist." And he told that to Wigdor. Wigdor said, I guess I'll file this crazy lawsuit that I have.
Right.
And the crazy lawsuit was filed August 1st.
So how did you end up wrapped up in this? If he's trying to possibly prevent a Sky News merger.
Right.
What does that have to do with you, who
Yeah, like
lives in Dallas
why
and
is
doesn't
Ed
work for
Butowski?
Fox?
Yeah, why is Ed Butowski, who, by the way, doesn't work for Fox, okay, has or had a lot of friends at Fox, okay? They don't talk to me anymore, all right? Hopefully, I'll be able to talk to them one day, okay? Because there's a lot of great people there. And how did I get involved? I don't have any idea, except a story that was dreamt up. And here's the story. This is what the lawsuit wants you to believe. And this is what made headlines all over the world. And this is what Mr. and Mrs. Rich's lawsuit is related to, okay? Because a lot of stuff in their lawsuit came from this lawsuit. So think about this. The lawsuit says that President Trump was getting very nervous about his collusion with Vladimir Putin and breaking into the DNC server, all right? So they decided that they needed some help to create a diversion from that issue. Now, it's already been proven there was no collusion between Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, but we're the conspiracy theorists, right?
Well, but let me finish this point, because I think it's a very important point. It's already been proven that there's no collusion between any of that. But the lawsuit wants you to believe that Vladimir Putin, President Trump, decided to call Ed Butowski in Dallas to create a diversion from their Russian hacking problem. Cassandra, I can't even do one PowerPoint slide. I don't know how to create, I don't know any of this stuff. It's all made up. I've never met the President of the United States in my life. I've never given him any money. I was called a Trump supporter, a Trump enthusiast, a huge Trump backer, all right? I was called a rich Republican conservative. That cost me a lot of pairs of shoes, by the way, because my wife said, I didn't know we were rich. I said, I didn't know we were rich either. And this happened overnight. And the idea was, along with that story, is that I then called up the Rich family. I decided this was my plan that I presented to Trump. I'm going to call up the Riches, and I'm going to just harass them, all right? This is what the story goes, although it doesn't make any sense, and no one can even understand it. And then somehow I would go get Rod Wheeler to go along with this and use him as a pawn. And then I'd get Fox News to go along with the whole thing. And I was the mastermind. I'm the mastermind behind this. This is what the lawsuit wants you to believe.
Yes, and yet we're the conspiracy theorists, right?
Well, regardless of, you say that. The point is that the focus is how crazy this story is and how many people went along with it, Cassandra. Regardless of this conspiracy or that conspiracy, the facts are this was a complete made-up story that a lawsuit was filed against a private citizen whose life was completely destroyed over a BS lawsuit that doesn't have a dotted line to the truth.
Right.
And what happened after that, Cassandra, besides the death threats, okay, to my family, the vandalism to my home, they had a clock on the internet on how many days till my son got back to Vanderbilt so they could kill him. The crazy people in this country all jumped on this darn story and just assumed it was true. And it was all about this guy, Wigdor, making up a BS story. He even went on television the next day, Cassandra, along with Rod Wheeler, and said, we don't even know if our story's true. And everyone in the world, every media outlet, 377 newspapers I was on the cover of, 266,000 negative tweets, 2 days in a row, I was the #1 trending story on Facebook.
Right.
As a Trump supporter, making up stories, going after the parents of a dead child. All of this stuff because Wigdor and Wheeler made up a story to try to get money from Fox News.
It's insane. How are you going to fight back against this?
Yep.
Are you going to just keep fighting? You're not going to settle? You're not going to...
Well, Cassandra, it's very difficult. I want to get back to my life, okay? My life was one, I have a good life. Beautiful, wonderful wife, great kids. Thought I had great friends. After this, I found out who my real friends were. And I want to sit down next to Stuart Varney on Fox Business and discuss economics. And I miss a lot of what my life was. And some people say, just let it go. But I'm not that kind of person. I'm not going to sit back. But Cassandra, I'm not going to sit back and let what happened, just let it go. Just not going to do it.
Right.
And I don't know who would. I don't know anybody who would endure what I've endured. And now, we got a new lawsuit. This lawsuit says, on an article, by the way, that I didn't write. Let's remember something also. On this one article that Malia Zimmerman wrote, I didn't write it. What's the case against me?
You're not even quoted in it.
I know I'm not quoted in it. I didn't prepare it. I didn't do anything. And the lawsuit says that I defamed Rod Wheeler.
Right.
No, first of all, Rod Wheeler wasn't defamed. Second of all, Rod Wheeler wrote all the quotes himself. Third, I didn't write anything and didn't say anything. This country is out of their minds, people that want to accept this. And they don't want to hear what I have to say. And now, the lawsuit with Mr. and Mrs. Rich, what does that say? That, well, Ed Butowski didn't write the article, didn't say anything. But apparently, I think what it says is that they have emotional stress or distress. And that somehow I caused that.
Right.
I volunteered to pay a bill. I gave them money to help find out who murdered their son. So there's a lot more at work here. There's a lot more going on in this than people know.
Right.
So am I going to back away? No. Am I going to fight Mr. and Mrs. Rich? I'm not. I was brought up better than that. Right. I mean, what am I going to do? Sue Mr. and Mrs. Rich? No. How do you do that? So sorry, I have to sue you now for saying things that aren't true. So sorry, I've got to what? How do you defend yourself against the parents of a boy who was murdered? I mean, they're getting advice from this guy Bauman and these lawyers, and none of these people know what the hell they're talking about. If people care about the truth, what I just said is the truth, and Mr. and Mrs. Rich can do whatever they want to do, okay? I don't even know what they want, okay? I just hope they find some way to deal with what they have to deal with. I wish they would be honest with people, because there's a lot of hardship in this country and a lot of separation, and some of it has to do with this case.
Right.
But I'm not going to sue Mr. and Mrs. Rich, all right? They're actually really nice people. I know, it sounds strange. So is Rod Wheeler.
Yeah, they seem like
Bauman, not a nice guy.
people.
But Rod's the Rod and the Wheelers, and the Riches, these are good people, and there's just a lot of BS stories going on.
Yeah. Do you think that they've been manipulated in any way, or do you think that they just really don't believe, or I don't know.
Well, I think what you're saying is, like, why are the Riches doing that?
Yeah.
I've reached out over and over and over again, sent text messages to Mr. Rich ever since the May 15th article or May 16th article, because somehow somebody twisted something, and it was actually Bauman saying Butowski took advantage of the Riches. That makes no sense at all.
Right.
Okay, I mean, if you want to be confused, hire this guy Bauman. I mean, he's pretty good at just confusing things. Okay, but Mr. and Mrs. Rich, I didn't do anything to these people, and I never would.
Right.
I mean, why would I?
Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Have you reached out to anyone with WikiLeaks or related to WikiLeaks to?
Yeah. No,
I
let me make a point very clear. I think it's terrible that Seth Rich was murdered. Okay? I think it's terrible if anybody's murdered. I didn't really get into this for any reason, except I shared something, and then I thought very privately I was helping somebody out. I wasn't doing this in the limelight. I help lots of people out. I mean, I give money to people, and I'm out of that game, by the way, so anyone watching this, don't ask me for money. I'm done with that stuff. I'm somewhat done being a nice guy. But I do a lot of things privately, and that's what it is. It's private, okay? And I tease with my kids that at my funeral, there'll be a lot of people coming up telling stories. About how I helped their lives. And this is just bizarre. There's nothing else about it. Do I have an interest in finding out who murdered Seth Rich? Honestly, no. I had an interest in paying a bill so a family could find a way to get some comfort. And all the idiots out there that want to write terrible text messages to me, okay, go ahead. You know, they write horrible, mean things to my children. Go ahead. I will tell you one thing. I did find one. I confronted the guy in Virginia. I went to his place where he worked. I might just do a whole thing. We should do a whole TV show just on me confronting people who wrote mean things to me.
I'll chase them down with you.
I did. I went to his store and I said, I'm Ed Butowski. Like, I'll be right back. And he closed the door and never came back out. You know, people can do whatever they want to do. I'm not going to, you know, I have changed over this. But the idea embedded in the Wigdor Wheeler lawsuit and Mr. and Mrs. Rich's lawsuit, they're just pie in the sky stuff. They'll say, well, why'd you send this text message? There was one text message that said that the president, I was kidding around, and I guess I should be addressed because it comes up all the time. Malia Zimmerman was trying to get a hold of Rod Wheeler to confirm some quotes, ironically. She couldn't get a hold of him. Rod would respond to me probably more often than he did to Malia. I sent him a text message and I said, hey, Rod, hurry up, come on, you got to do this. The president's waiting. Because that's how he and I were teasing, because he always was asking me about getting him a job. And he said, Ed, when I solve this and it shows that the president didn't do anything with the server, the president's going to hire me. So that text message was me just teasing with him, come on, the White House is waiting. But what do people want to do? They want to make up a stupid story and say that the president was involved.
Right.
He wasn't involved with anything.
I always think about my text messages and my inside jokes, and I'm like, man, if Deep State's reading this, I'm in so much trouble.
Yeah, I mean, but you don't imagine that's going to happen. And I will tell you, you know, I don't know how long Wigdor's law firm is going to last, but, you know, and how good they're going to be and what they're going to be. But Disney should sign them up because they can come up with some really neat stories.
So I know that we're probably going really long right now, but to wrap things up, I know that you said that you don't really have interest in who killed Seth Rich or if he was involved with WikiLeaks or not. But
No.
Since you were around all these people who have such intense knowledge about the case, do you personally think that he was the leaker? And is there anything that you would hope, obviously besides naming his source, that Julian Assange would come out and say that could possibly help fit some puzzle pieces together for not only the Rich family, but for everybody who's involved in this chaotic mess?
Yeah, I hope the truth comes out one way or the other. Okay, and Mr. and Mrs. Rich and a number of other people know the truth, and they should come forward and just tell the truth. It's real simple.